Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ok Xoomer. I'm your host, Aaron Lichtig, Xometry guy and former Jeopardy champion. And I'm here today with Matthew Sciannella. And Matthew is the host of the Industrial Marketing Show. It's a pretty cool podcast about industrial marketing. And in his day job is as a senior strategist at Gorilla76, which is an agency focused on B2B marketing clients. Matthew, welcome. It's great to have you on.
Hey, Aaron, what's going on? So, wait, can you first tell me about your Jeopardy championship?
Oh, yeah. So I was on Jeopardy in January of 2019 and was fortunate enough to win a game.
Really? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to find that recording. Do you have it?
Recording of the game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have it. I can share it with you after the show.
Send it to me. I want to see it.
Are you a fan of Jeopardy?
Very much so. Yes, very much so. Fan of the way out Alex Trebek in Jeopardy.
Yeah, and that was such disappointing news that came out a week or so ago now. He was a wonderful man, very warm and very curious. I was very lucky to have had the chance to meet him in person.
I bet.
Well, back to the topic at hand. Tell us about the Industrial Marketing Show.
Yeah, so that show was something I started really on a whim. Once the pandemic hit in March, I got sent home from work. I wasn't furloughed, I was just working from home full time. A lot of the marketing I was doing at the company I was working at then was very video based. I had a very video heavy content marketing strategy and can't shoot a lot of video from from home. So, we switched to doing other content, but I had free time on my hands, and podcasting was something that I had seen was really exponentially growing in popularity, and I wanted to try my hand at it just to see what it was like and see how I could use it to produce a personal outcome for me and really just beta test it for business purposes. So I met MJ, who's my co-host. We met on LinkedIn, and we just sort of kind of started talking about starting a podcast, and we made it happen in like 3 weeks, got our first episode up and started pitching guests and bringing them on. And we're 35 episodes later, we're still going every week with the show, and it's been an amazing experience. We bootstrapped the whole thing. We did it for free to start. We were like $0 investment. How do you do it? And then we figured that out. Poured a little bit of money into it, and the results of it have been, to me, really interesting in terms of just the networking effect of it. Like sort of this principle called content-based networking, where basically you use content to bring people in and network with them, get introduced to them. And then how that becomes, for my purposes, it really became a career lubricant. I was able to get 2 jobs in large part because of the podcast. I was basically discovered by 2 founders for running this podcast. And basically they just listened to it, liked my content, and invited me to apply for positions at their company, and was able to get 2 jobs during COVID, in no large part or no small part because of the podcast. I can't think of many people who were able to do that.
That's awesome. Now, how do you and MJ come up with the topics for your show?
Well, the first thing we do is we do a lot of user feedback. So really, we listen to our guests and what they say. For my agency, Gorilla76, I certainly pay attention to what people are asking us about in the episodic webinar series that I run there. And I think, well, how can I make that into a podcast episode as well, or maybe have a different angle on it for my podcast? We definitely get feedback from our guests, LinkedIn messages, just non-recorded conversations about things they're curious about. So that's a big thing. And then the other thing are just the things that MJ and I struggle with or are curious about or want to dissect, or people we're really interested in talking to, and sort of the unique perspectives that they can bring to the podcast. So we focus pretty heavily on industrial people. So, I mean, we've had Joe Sullivan, Daniel Richard from Xometry has been on. We've had Aaron Haynes from Manitou, currently at Firetrace. And then we've gone off script too with that. We've had, Joel Kletke from Case Study Buddy to talk about really specific things like doing case studies that are impactful. So we've gone off the board, and then we've done some solo casts too, where we've just kind of talked about our take on the evolution of content, or MarTech, like what's a good MarTech stack for an industrial company, especially a small one. So we really try to pursue all angles and figure out kind of what's going to be most impactful for our listeners.
What's been your favorite episode?
My favorite episode, I have recency bias when it comes to that. So it's probably Joel Klettke's one on case studies because it was just an absolute masterclass on it. Although, I mean, because he just thinks of so many things that make an effective case study that I think a lot of people overlook. I will say one of my favorite episodes, though, my favorite episodes really come from salespeople. So we've had a couple sales guys on. Jake Hall, one of the guys we had on, he's known as on LinkedIn as the manufacturing millennial, great name. And I find it incredible how much better salespeople are getting at marketing, and how it's the inverse with marketers at sales. Like marketers aren't getting any better at sales, but salespeople are getting so much better at marketing. And I'm looking at people like Jake Hall and Chris Bliven, who was another sales guy I had on the podcast, and how they're basically using marketing to grow to basically grow their company's brand and give themselves more sales enablement to sell more. I think those people to me are fascinating to talk to, sort of how they approach it, because they have no sense of like what's good or what's bad. It's like, I'm going to just ship it and be scrappy and just repurpose content I think is interesting. And they just build an amazing audience by doing stuff like that. Those are my favorite people to talk to on the show.
What is your favorite thing about working in industrial marketing, specifically manufacturing marketing?
I think that's a really good question. Probably my most favorite part is opening eyes to what marketing can do for companies. I think a lot of people have looked at the marketing playbook in industrial for so long. It was trade shows, it was print advertisement, it was, direct mail was another big part of it. And just the opportunities that exist going digital, how much more cost effective it is to go digital, how much better targeting you can do to your ideal customers going digital, how you can segment really well going digital. So it's really opening people's eyes to that, and then maturing kind of the full cycle marketing sales alignment, which I think so many industrial companies are very sales driven and product driven organizations. Can you name a marketing driven manufacturing company in your mind right now? No. Yeah. So they're so sales driven, and they're so product driven, and it's for good reason. That's what's worked for them for 30, 40 years. And just the way that people buy now, it's much more of a low touch digital experience. It's more passive browsing and researching and discovering. And there's just so much to be had there in the industrial space that I think is largely missed or just not trusted. So showing people how that works and how it can produce a business result, to me, is the most satisfying part. Like, you can go into SaaS and the tech, and it's a given that it works that way. Not always, but usually. But industrial, it's so much learning curve that goes with it. And so I enjoy not just showing them the possibilities, but I feel like marketing, when done really well, matures very old organizations into having a more holistic revenue operation. And so that's the thing I enjoy most about working in industrial.
That's cool. Yeah, I love working in the manufacturing side of things as well. When you said name an industrial company that is marketing driven, I was tempted to say Xometry, but I also don't think we're really an industrial company. We're more of a manufacturing network, or a kind of digital first type of company. But what kind of excites you most about the marketing space in manufacturing in general, and where it's going to be headed over the next 5-10 years?
I think brand to me is the most exciting part of the industrial space. I think so. A lot of industrial companies who are doing digital marketing really well, a lot of them are still stuck on the lead gen kind of hamster wheel. And I was just auditing a client today, and I was looking through their dashboard of like funnel metrics. And so, going through, conversions that convert to sales opportunities. And I'm looking at their ebook forms, and it's like 172 ebook downloads in a quarter. Not one of them turn into a sales qualified opportunity. And then I'm looking at like RFQ or contact us forms, and like definitely more there within a smaller sample size. And so I think what's exciting for industrial companies is the ability to win on brand. There's so much thought that industrial widgets are commodities out there, and so I like the idea of trying to win in the mind of the consumer before they ever get to the point of thinking about the commodity. So if you can get out on awareness channels like Facebook and like LinkedIn and like YouTube as well. I look at YouTube very much as an awareness channel. And if you can get your ideal customer in your content stream, if you can give them all value without any expectation of a sale and respect the terms with which they will buy, their own buying timeline, eventually that need will come if you do your segmentation and your targeting properly. And you have the ability to win before they ever get to a Google search bar to go search for that product, because you'll be the first person they think of when they have that need. And I think a lot of industrial companies don't think of marketing that way, but that is the way that a lot of the great companies, the great industrial companies win, the great companies in general win, is they win on brand. And brand is something that's intangible. You have to connect dots. It's not like something you can very neatly attribute. But when done well, it's super powerful, and it is an extremely competitive advantage, as opposed to other things that I think a lot of industrial companies are doing with their marketing right now, like trade shows.
Well, kind of hard to do trade shows right now.
Right.
That's at least in this part of the country. So what advice would you have for somebody who wants to start their own podcast or other type of content program online?
My biggest advice is niche down. If I were to have made a podcast about marketing in general, no one would have listened to it, because I would be another marketer in a sea of other marketers. And I would have competed with every SaaS marketer out there, every demand gen marketer out there, every marketer who's doing general marketing podcasting. Niching down into industrial was easily a masterstroke of a move. I should give MJ equal credit for that, because it really tightly defined who our podcast was for. We didn't obsess over the hugest audience. We wanted a very loyal listenership. So it was very U-shaped, kind of how that growth happened. Like, we got a big spike at first, it flattened, and now recently it's exponentially grown again. And we're totally comfortable having, 100 to 125 listeners every week. We're totally comfortable, slowly growing to, 3,000 listens over the course of 5 months. So if you want to do a podcast, niche down. It's a long game. So make sure that you're in it for the long haul. Like, don't do a podcast for 2 or 3 months and then bail on it because you're not getting the results you want. It really took us 5 months before we started to see that growth curve happen on it. And I think marketing, and to me, that's instructive of what good marketing is. Marketing is focused and it's disciplined, and it understands momentum when it sees it. So speed, momentum, creativity, I think are the 3 main things to an effective podcast, and for any content play in general. You have to get it out fast. You have to have the discipline to know it's a long game, and you have to be creative. Don't be afraid to get scrappy or bootstrap it to start out with until you can prove the concept out.
Speed, momentum, and creativity. That's great advice. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for joining us on Ok Xoomer today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Aaron. Appreciate it.
All right, and thanks everybody for listening and watching. We'll see you again in another couple days with another episode of Ok Xoomer.